Visibility is clear at 10 miles, and the temperature is mild at 17 degrees C. Runway 28L at San Francisco International Airport is 11,381 feet long and 200 feet wide, ideal for handling large aircraft like the Boeing 777. The airport is equipped with an instrument landing system, ILS, providing precise lateral and vertical guidance during approaches, especially useful in low visibility conditions. The ILS consists of two components, the localizer and the glide slope. The localizer guides the aircraft along the center line of the runway, indicating deviations left or right. The glide slope ensures the aircraft maintains the correct descent angle, signaling if it is too high or too low relative to the ideal approach path. On this day, the glide slope for runway 28L is out of service, meaning the crew must manually manage the descent angle. Lateral guidance from the localizer remains operational, giving them accurate alignment with the runway centerline, but vertical guidance is fully reliant on the crew's skill and judgment. Captain Lee, being relatively inexperienced on the 777 and with no prior manual landing attempts at San Francisco without ILS support, is the pilot flying. Though uneasy, he keeps his concerns private, likely influenced by hierarchical culture and deference to authority in the cockpit. At 11:12 a.m., 15 minutes before landing, the relief first officer returns to the cockpit, taking a jump seat behind the captain and first officer. By this time, the crew has completed the descent checklist, including verifying altimeters, autopilot modes, flap settings, fuel levels, and airspeed targets. They are now descending toward San Francisco with ATC clearance. The crew intercepts a straight-in approach to runway 28L. 9 minutes later, the approach controller asks if they have the airport in sight. First Officer Lee confirms. An ATC clears them for a visual approach. The airplane descends through 6,300 feet at an airspeed of about 211 knots. Flaps and landing gear are retracted. The autopilot flight director system is in flight level change speed mode, automatically adjusting pitch to maintain a selected airspeed. The auto throttle is in hold mode, meaning engine thrust will not automatically adjust unless manually changed by the pilots. At 11:23 a.m., the airplane captures the localizer descending through 4,800 feet. The pilot flying commands flaps 1, and the pilot monitoring confirms speed check flaps 1. Set. About 14 miles from the runway, descending through 4,800 feet, ATC instructs the crew to reduce airspeed to 100 knots and maintain it until 5 miles out. The pilot flying adjusts airspeed accordingly and calls for flaps 5, speed check flaps 5, set. With these settings, the airplane maintains lateral alignment, but managing vertical profile becomes challenging. Leaving the autopilot in flight level change speed mode complicates the descent. When the pilot flying reduces airspeed, the autopilot pitches the nose up, slowing descent, requiring precise coordination to maintain glide path. The pilot flying could deploy speed brakes to manage descent more effectively, but he does not. The airplane begins to drift above the desired glide path. The rate of descent drops to 300 feet per minute, far below the optimal 700-1,000 feet per minute for a stabilized approach. The relief first officer reminds the crew to maintain 180 knots until 5 miles out, as instructed by ATC earlier. The pilot monitoring acknowledges, but the aircraft has not yet reduced speed, remaining slightly above the glide path and too fast for optimal approach management. At 11:24 a.m., approximately 8.5 nautical miles from the runway, the pilot flying calls to lower the landing gear. Extending gear increases drag and helps reduce speed, but the airplane remains about 900 feet above the glide path. He could also command flaps 20 to increase drag further, but he does not. Workload for the crew increases as they struggle to manage altitude, airspeed, and pitch simultaneously. The pilot monitoring notices the aircraft is high. This seems a little high. The pilot flying acknowledges but does not take immediate corrective action. Seconds later he asks, "Do you mean it's too high?" The first officer responds vaguely, and the pilot flying decides to descend faster. "I'll descend more." Vertical speed is increased to 1,500 feet per minute, yet the aircraft is still above glide path. For 21 seconds, there is no further communication between the flight crew. The airplane continues descending through 2,600 feet at 1,000 feet per minute, but remains unstable. Suddenly, the vertical speed is adjusted back to 1,000 feet per minute, inappropriate for the altitude above glide path. The airplane requires a higher descent rate to regain proper profile, but the crew's situational awareness is insufficient. At 11:25 a.m., ATC instructs the crew to contact San Francisco Tower. Pilot monitoring acknowledges. The pilot flying confirms the missed approach altitude of 3,000 feet to be used in case of a go-around. The aircraft crosses the last waypoint, descending through 2,250 feet at about 54 nautical miles from the runway, still 450 feet higher than the minimum crossing altitude. Flaps 20 are commanded to increase drag, speed reduced to 52 knots. Pilot flying requests flaps 30. Speed check, flaps 30. Set. The airplane remains above glide path and too fast, with a 70 knots airspeed, above maximum for flaps 30 deployment. Approach remains unstable. Pilot flying switches autopilot pitch mode to flight level change speed, focusing on airspeed, but vertical profile remains unstable. Selected approach altitude of 3,000 feet exceeds current altitude of 1,050 feet, causing autopilot to add thrust, pitching nose up, creating conflicting inputs. Pilot flying disconnects autopilot manually, taking control, pulls thrust to idle, pushes control column forward to stop climb, unknowingly switching auto throttle to hold mode. Aircraft speed begins dropping rapidly, unrecognized by the crew. At 11,026, approximately 2.9 miles from runway, selected airspeed 1,007 knots, actual airspeed 1,005 knots, descending at 1,005 per minute. Flight path continues unstable. POI lights indicate 4 white lights, signaling aircraft high on glide path. As the airplane descends through 1,000 feet at an airspeed of 151 knots, the POI lights show 4 white lights, still indicating the aircraft is above the glide path. Despite this, the airspeed continues to drop rapidly. The vertical descent rate accelerates beyond what is needed for a stabilized approach. The pilot flying struggles to manage both speed and vertical profile. The aircraft remains too high and too fast, creating a delicate situation that requires precise control inputs. The relief first officer and pilot monitoring observe the deviation, but do not immediately initiate a corrective go-around. The airplane crosses 500 feet above ground level, a critical decision height for visual approaches. At this point, the approach is unstable, airspeed has dropped dangerously, vertical profile is incorrect, and descent rate is inconsistent. Minimums require the crew to either stabilize or initiate a go-around. The flight crew, however, continues the approach, attempting to correct deviations manually. The autopilot is now disengaged. The pilot flying is fully controlling pitch and thrust. He increases the pitch slightly to slow descent, but airspeed falls further to 132 knots. The stick shaker activates, vibrating the control column as a stall warning. The pilot monitoring calls out the low airspeed, but corrective action is insufficient to regain safe parameters. The airplane continues to descend rapidly. The glide path lights indicate 4 red lights, confirming the aircraft is below the ideal path. The pilot flying attempts to pull back on the control column to arrest descent. Engines respond to thrust commands, but with limited altitude remaining, the airplane cannot recover. At 11:27, approximately 39 feet above the ground, the tail of Aviation Airlines Flight 214 strikes the seawall at the edge of the runway. The impact shears off the tail section, ejecting several passengers. The main fuselage spins, skids along the tarmac and grass, and comes to rest. Emergency slides deploy automatically. In the cabin, panic erupts. Passengers scream, some look out windows in disbelief, others cling to seatbelts and pray silently. Crew members shout instructions, helping passengers evacuate as quickly as possible. Despite the chaos, the crew manages to guide nearly everyone off the plane. Miraculously, of the 307 people on board, 30 survive. Many sustain injuries ranging from broken bones to lacerations. 3 passengers tragically lose their lives. Emergency responders arrive swiftly, extinguishing small fires and assisting with medical care. The subsequent investigation highlights several critical factors. Captain Lee's limited experience manually landing the Boeing 777 without ILS support. breakdown in cockpit communication and authority gradients, preventing clear discussion of concerns. Inadequate monitoring of airspeed, descent rate, and vertical profile by both pilot flying and monitoring. Mismanagement of autopilot and auto-throttle modes, leading to unintended speed loss and pitch conflicts. The National Transportation Safety Board, NTSB, emphasizes the importance of proper manual flying training, communication in high-stress cockpit situations, and situational awareness during visual approaches. Training programs are updated worldwide to ensure pilots can safely conduct visual landings without automated guidance.